Well, before I moved to Strasbourg, I had lived in Germany for 7 years. 7 years. And I had to say I had a 7 years was the understatement of the millennium. It was like I'm surrounded by a swarm of mosquitoes. Now, ironically, there are so many German immigrants in the United States that an American going to Germany feels almost at home there. And then you scratch the surface. And some of the cultural differences will show up on the trains, for example. So I will get on a train, sit down by myself, put my bag down next to me, hoping nobody else will sit there. Of course, here in France, if somebody needs to take that seat, they will ask, is this seat free? And I will move my bag and they sit down. Over in Germany, get on the train, put my bag down, looking out the window, watching the rolling hills pass me by, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this rather substantial derriere angling its way in to take that seat, and before I can grab my purse, she had sat down right on top of it. And then turned to me and said, "You should have expected me to sit there." And I'm like, what? Wow. I mean, way to palm off responsibility for your own actions, folks. And other things you will often encounter on the trains in Germany are you'll be getting onto a crowded train and someone, large person with usually an enormous backpack taking up the depths of two people, will plant themselves firmly right in the doorway so you cannot get past them. So you're forced to say, excuse me. And at best they will grunt at you. And if you persist in doing what you think is the polite thing to do, which is to say, excuse me, please, I really need to get on the train. Can you, one way or another there? They will finally turn to you and say, "You are so impolite." Turns out, I don't actually mind being pushed out of the way. In fact, they seem to expect it. Now you push a New Yorker out of the way, they're going to pull out whatever weapon they're carrying and they will kill you with it. But other things that I started noticing in Germany is that the German people just hate to be asked to move. And the authorities recognize that. And when they designed their new trains, instead of the kind of pleasant ping that other trains use to announce the opening and closing of the doors, they chose an ambulance siren. So it's like, because they know that the people need the oral equivalent of a cattle prod to get them to move. Meantime, you're on that train for about half an hour, and every 5 minutes it pulls into a station, the doors open and close, and that goes off, and by the time you get off that train, your whole body is vibrating like and you're very stressed out. You will never find Germany on the list of happiest countries in the world. And everyone in Germany is obsessed with their rules. They have rules for everything in your life. And if you're not following the rules, they feel compelled to instruct you so you can better fit into German society. So, for example, once I'm on my bike, stopped at a red light, and I stopped just a little bit over that line that they paint on the ground to show you where you're supposed to stop at a red light, waiting for the light to change. Meantime, there's somebody next to me, and she's getting ever more agitated, and finally she just bursts out, "You have to move, you're over the line, back. And I'm like, wow, OCD. But if you actually need help with something, you're going to meet with an entirely different reaction. Racing for the tram one day, they hadn't put the number at the top to show you what tram it was, so jumped onto the train and I said, is this a line number 1? And everyone turned to me in unison and went, "We don't know." And I'm like, seriously, you don't know? You're just on the tram for fun, just taking that ride to nowhere? Another time, I'm online at the post office, and it's a long and snaking line because there's only one person at that counter. Meanwhile, the post office doubles as the post bank, just like it does here in France. And they have these nifty machines, they call a multi-functions machine, that they put right in the lobby, so you can do all your digital transactions without ever having to go to a teller. So I'm waiting on the line, and in rushes this little old woman, goes straight for the machine, and she's poised to make a transaction, and she's completely stumped. So she looks over at the people and then back at the machine, tries to hit a couple of buttons, gets completely flustered, and then turns to the people again, says, "Can someone please help me with this?" They all turned to her in unison and said, "We don't know how it works." And she's like, "Really? You don't know how it works, you dumb idiots?" And I had to laugh because you know what? Give me 10, 20 more years in Germany, I'm still here, that's gonna be me. I also started getting very sensitive to the language. And it's a very ancient language, and we know that this part of the world has been occupied by various human species for 100,000 years or so. And there's certain words in German that make me think I'm hearing these early humans' attempts to create their first spoken language. So, for example, the word in German for over there is da. French, it's là-bas. Da. The word for off we go in German is los. French, allons-y, on y va, off we go, los. And they take these small word units and put them together to create more complex concepts. So my favorite word in German is Eisprung, which translates as egg jump. And this is the German word for ovulation. So you have to picture this little egg jumping out of the fallopian tubes, heading down the ovaries loose. But a very popular word combination in German is Schaden and Freude, which translates as the pleasure someone takes in the suffering of others. And it's a particular pleasure if they have been the one to inflict that suffering. Sums up my 7 years in Germany. But if you look for a word for compassion in the German language, it doesn't exist. But the word most English speakers have the most fun with in German is the word for to travel. Infinitive is fahren. Conjugate that to the third person singular and you've got fart. First time I heard that, I turned to my German friend and said, "How do you say that with a straight face?" And he looked at me absolutely horrified as if I were the most vulgar creature he'd ever met. But then you know what? He ate a Snickers bar with a knife and fork. OCD.